Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the second event in 2 days in the Bay Area that was sold out. I'll leave you to maybe think about which one the first one was. Yeah, so congratulations to the Warriors. Yeah, see? All right, we've got a good crowd here this afternoon. Okay, now, have you been drinking already? Was there? That was another crowd. Hey, welcome to the bank. It's my privilege and honor to get to welcome you to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. David did a great job of setting you up a little bit for what we do here, and I'm really happy to see that we have a capacity crowd here at the bank and the Yellen Conference Center for this book launch. This is the West Coast launch of the book. Last week was on the East Coast, and really happy and proud to welcome our friends from the Nonprofit Finance Fund here for today's West Coast launch. It's always a little sunnier and happier on the West Coast anyways. So the goal of this book and of these launch events is really to start a dialogue at a national level of how we can all work together toward the goals we share for expanding economic opportunity to more of our neighborhoods, and in turn to more of our neighbors, particularly those who are on the lower rungs of the income ladder. Leadership and community development is a priority for the San Francisco Fed. And even this morning, I think in about 10 minutes time, I had at least 10 different people come up and thank me for the work that the bank is doing in this space. The team, I think, here is well regarded, not just in the Federal Reserve System, but in the nation as a whole. Because we recognize that prosperity in all of our communities means prosperity for all of our communities, not just for some of them. And achieving our full economic potential as a region and as a nation really means that can only happen when every individual has the opportunity and the means available to reach his or her potential. So when people ask me the question, what matters, my short answer is people. It's people like everybody in this room, serving as leaders in the public and the nonprofit and the investment space, working to build strong, vibrant communities through meaningful initiatives and investments. These investments ultimately drive results that empower people and communities to reach their full potential. The critical question, though, is how best to target these efforts. And the purpose of this book, I won't hold this one up because this is the first one, but that book is to highlight strategies that work, that are proven to work. In fact, it's the fourth in a series of books titled What Works. And it argues that if we're going to make progress in improving the effectiveness of our investments, no matter whether they're related to education, housing, healthcare, or poverty reduction, whatever the target area, we should start to shift our mindset to evaluating outcomes and not inputs. It's not the volume of activity that matters nearly as much as if we're not tackling the root causes of these issues in our community. An outcomes-oriented approach to these efforts should lead to more efficient utilization of the scarce resources that we have, which is critical for making progress on community and societal issues that have taxed us for some time, and they're very difficult to solve. Another key takeaway, as I've glanced through the book, is the notion that culture drives change. Organizations whose internal culture is resistant to change will likely find that they're limited in their ability to make change in the outside world. So I can tell you within our own organization, this is a major focus for us and our leadership team here. We're working to build an inclusive culture that allows for innovation. Now, as the Central Bank of the United States, it may not surprise you to know that we are just slightly risk averse. Yes, it's true. David's welcome included, I think, 5 cautions and a little bit of directions to the restroom. So yeah, we're just slightly risk averse, but we're working to fix that. We're working to reduce the amount of process, bureaucracy, and other needless effort that our employees face in their workday, and to unleash their creative potential and enable the bank to meet not just our current objectives, but the future challenges that lie ahead of us. We want our culture to be one that's inclusive and welcoming to everyone, one that allows every individual to achieve their career goals, and one that values diversity in all of its dimensions. We know that to get better results, we need to have diverse teams. We've seen that, we've proven that, and having that be in an environment where every voice is heard. So honestly, this book is a great example of this. There are a lot of diverse thoughts in this book. There are a lot of different voices, and there are a range of views. And this afternoon, we'll get a chance to hear just some of those voices. So I'll end my time with you by just saying again, thank you for being here. I hope you feel this inclusive and welcoming culture in your short time this afternoon at the bank. I hope that includes time at the reception this afternoon after all of the panels and speaking have concluded for the day. And again, welcome and enjoy your time here at the bank. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. And next, I want to invite up Nancy Andrews. She is president and CEO of the Low Income Investment Fund. She is oversees an organization that's invested $2 billion in low-income communities across the country, so really an expert in all of these issues. But in addition to having just sort of this unbelievable knowledge of the field and can execute in a very practical manner, is also one of those rare people who also can think big and is really the one who got us started down this path years ago when we did our first book, What Works. And so Nancy, can you come up?
Thanks, David, and thanks to all of you who came out today. I also want to especially thank the Nonprofit Facilities Fund and Anthony Bug Levine for the leadership that you have given us in this field. David made a reference to the first book, which is this one, that we did, which started out the whole What Works series. Someone at the Washington, D.C. Fed actually joked with me that we needed to copyright the word what, because somehow the magic of that word led to a number of other books, and I couldn't be more proud than to have my colleagues and friends that are in this great field of community development get inspired enough by some initial thinking that was done to actually want to do books too. And I see Andrea Levere is here in the room. Andrea, fantastic work, and Anthony carrying the charge forward. Each and every one of these 4 books, if you have time to read them, are milestones along a path that embraces and helps develop a vision for what the community development field can be and what we have to offer to the world. I want to especially thank the role and leadership of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, David Erickson in particular, but his colleagues along with him, in opening up our eyes and our thoughts in creating this kind of fora, which allows us to think big and then take the thoughts that we dream when we're here in this room and put them into practice. So a million thanks to you all, David. It couldn't have been done without you. Now, David and Anthony asked me if I would talk for just a minute, and I'm not going to take too long, but just a minute about the origin story of how the copyrighted word what, how the whole What Works process got started. And in order to do that, I have to take you back to 2010. And you have to imagine that you're in my living room, which is at the top of a hill and has a beautiful view of the lights of San Francisco. So sort of imagine a dark evening, but with wonderful lights coming in through the open windows. And you also have to imagine something called lemon drops. Now, when I say lemon drops, I'm not talking about the throat lozenge. I'm talking about a miraculous drink that David and his better half, Doug Judy, made. And they brought it over in a very, very large bell jar to my house, and we had dinner together. And that was about 7 years ago, and at that time we were strong housing practitioners and community place-based practitioners, but we also read, and we were starting to learn about some of the new science that was coming out about poverty, the influence of stress on young children, how it impacts the way in which their brains develop and how long that effect lasts. And we began to feel just a little bit challenged in our place-based work. And we began to try to understand this new knowledge that was coming into the field and incorporate it into our own practice. Because at the end of the day, what each and every one of us is all about, Anthony, Andrea, David, me, all of us, what we're about, and everyone in this room, is figuring out how to create opportunities for all Americans, how to create economic justice, how to reverse inequality. That's what we're here for. And yet we were learning things that we didn't quite know how to incorporate in our current state of practice. And so that you can imagine being sort of lubricated by lemon drops and the view out the windows. You can kind of imagine how energized the conversation around the dinner table got as we tried to incorporate this new, somewhat challenging evidence. And right then and there, at that dinner table, we created and imagined that there needed to be a paradigm shift in our work. We realized that the theory of change within community development had not really changed all that much in the 50 years that it had been working. And we were bold enough and probably a little bit released and liberated enough to believe that we had the power. We had the ideas, we had the ability to create a paradigm shift. And that actually gave rise to the thinking behind the original Investing in What Works book. Now, I do want to say one thing, which is I love the cover of this book, and you can see all these little strands. There were many arguments about each and every one of these strands. What it's trying to say to you is there's a network. We need to have a network. Well, I like this one a lot better because I think it gets that idea across a whole lot better than the original one. But in any event, we were then quickly aided and abetted by Brandy McHale, who's now the president and CEO of the City Foundation, who got excited about this idea, loved it, and then generously supported it. So that began the whole What Works proposition, and I have to say that 55,000 copies of that early book later, and 2 million social media hits later, and then a couple of books later, I feel like we really did start something that has made a difference. But what we were trying to say in that very first enterprise was that that the age-old debate between place-based and people-based strategies is over, and both sides won. That it takes place and people, investing in place and investing in people, that physical revitalization and human services are equal partners in an effort to try to lift people up and create communities that actually provide the opportunities that people need to thrive. And so that early idea of the unity between people and place-based strategies led to our thinking that it really takes integrative approaches. Poverty and the lack of economic opportunity is a 7-day-a-week, 360, 24-hour problem, and you don't address it by just doing affordable housing or focusing on schools or focusing on health clinics. You do it by addressing many things at the same time and doing it in a coordinated fashion. I often think of the metaphor of an orchestra leader, someone who actually pulls music out of notes, that if you simply throw a bunch of notes on a sheet of paper, you don't really have music. It's only when those notes are organized and coordinated and have a vision that you actually create something that's called music. And that's our job in this field. Now, one of the key things that we believed in putting those original ideas together is not only do we have to coordinate complicated and cross-sectoral work, but we also have to focus on outcomes. We have to focus on getting the job done, not just doing things. And I'm so thrilled with the work that Anthony is doing because the Nonprofit Facilities Fund has really become a leader in taking that message forward. But I think, and this is how I want to leave you, I want to leave you with a challenge, because much of what, as we do the Pay for Success work, as we learn how to do that work, much of it is still located within single sectors or within silos. And the ultimate challenge really is to break those silos down and to coordinate that work so that it actually becomes something like music. So I think that is one of the future challenges that we have as a field. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point you to my chapter in this book. And what I want to say is that we at the Low Income Investment Fund are taking the question of investing for outcomes and investing cross-sector in a very, very serious way. And so you can kind of take our early stage work around this as version 1, and I invite anyone to improve on and make it better. But we've created something called equity with a twist, and there's a double entendre there. Equity means equity in terms of social justice, and it also means equity in a style of investing. Putting money into enterprises, not into projects, but into enterprises that are taking on the complexity of becoming the orchestra leader, the community quarterback, of bringing multiple strands of work together. And in our equity with a twist model, we're taking the position that mixed income affordable housing in combination with high quality early learning and child development in combination with high quality education are 3 critical components that must be in place for kids to really have a chance to break out of the conditions of poverty and to thrive in the future. So take a look at that. Let's see if we can improve on it. But I want to, if nothing else, just again say to David, to Ian Galloway, who's somewhere in the room, to Anthony and the Nonprofit Facilities Fund, thank you all so much for the leadership that you've given us, for helping us continue down this path, and for keeping the thread going. So thank you all.